My name is Rebecca and I'm 29 years old. I still remember the exact tone of my mother's voice that morning. Sharp, impatient, and laced with entitlement. Rebecca, she said, standing in my living room like she owned it. Stop being selfish. That's a free house. Either share it with your sister or you're no longer our daughter. The words echoed off the cream-colored walls. The same walls I'd painted myself. The same house I'd spent years saving for. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, nodding like some sort of silent judge. My younger sister, Megan, was slouched on the sofa, scrolling through her phone with that smirk she always wore when she knew she had backup. Mom, I started slowly, forcing my voice to stay calm. I bought this house. It's not a free house. It's mine. She scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. You're being dramatic again. Family helps family. Megan just broke up with her boyfriend, and she needs a place to stay. You have 2 bedrooms. You'll survive. Megan didn't even look up. It's not like she has anyone living with her, she muttered. She's always alone anyway. The sting hit, but I didn't show it. I just smiled faintly and replied, You're right. I'm alone because I like peace. My dad cleared his throat. Enough with the attitude, Rebecca. We raised you better than this. It's just temporary. I turned to him and asked quietly, like when I temporarily lent you $5,000 for the business that never existed? Or when I, temporarily, gave Megan money for her college tuition, which she dropped out of after 1 semester? That wiped the smirk off Megan's face. Mom's nostrils flared. Dad shifted uncomfortably. You're always keeping score, Mom hissed. No wonder no one wants to be around you. That one hurt more than I wanted to admit. But instead of fighting, I just smiled. That small, calm smile that always made them uneasy. All right, I said softly. If that's how you feel, then I guess you've made your decision. Megan finally looked up. What decision? I picked up my keys from the counter, slipped on my shoes and opened the front door. The one where I stopped trying to prove I belong in this family, I said. Then I walked out. When I got into my car, I didn't cry. Not even a little. Instead, I stared at the house through the windshield, my chest rising and falling slowly as the air conditioner hummed. That house was more than just bricks and furniture to me. It was freedom, my proof that I could survive without anyone's help. It had taken me 4 years of double shifts, side jobs, and skipped vacations to afford it. Every nail, every tile, every piece of furniture. I had picked it all. Alone. And now they wanted to take it from me because Megan needed space. I sat there for several minutes, letting the weight of everything sink in. Then, slowly, the corners of my lips curled into a smile. Because they had just made a massive mistake. They thought I'd back down, that I'd eventually open the door again, apologize like always, and make room for their chaos. But this time they'd pushed too far. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was upset, but because I was planning. I pulled out my laptop and opened my email. My heart was steady, my mind sharp. I started pulling up documents. Property contracts, bank statements, utilities. I had prepared for something like this long ago. My family had always seen me as the quiet one, the pushover, the nice girl who'd bend before she'd break. They had no idea that the girl who stayed silent was also the one who'd learned to plan for survival. And what they didn't know yet was that the house they were trying to take wasn't really what they thought it was. Not entirely anyway. That's when the idea came to me. A calm, cold, calculated decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to explain myself. I was going to let them walk right into their own trap. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. My phone was full of unread messages from Mom, long paragraphs about family values, forgiveness, and doing the right thing. I didn't bother opening them. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the sky fade from black to gold. It was quiet, peaceful. The kind of morning that reminded me why I'd bought this place in the first place. By 8 a.m. I'd made my decision. Picked up my phone and called Mom. Her voice came through sharp and cold. Finally decided to call back. Yeah, I said casually. I've been thinking. You're right. That caught her off guard. What do you mean? I've been selfish, I said, forcing a little guilt into my tone. If Megan needs a place to stay, she can move in. It's fine. There was a pause, followed by the sound of her sigh. That victorious sigh I'd heard too many times before. I knew you'd come around, she said proudly. We'll come by later today with her things. Sure, I replied. I'll leave the key under the mat. I hung up before she could say another word. Then I smiled, slowly, coldly, deliberately. They had no idea that the house wasn't truly theirs to take. Because months ago, I'd already done something that would change everything. When I first bought the property, I registered it under a temporary rental agreement through a friend's housing company. Technically, the deed and lease were still in my friend's business name. It was a safety net, one that meant no one, not even my family, could make legal claims on the property without my say. It wasn't something I'd planned out of distrust, at least not at first. It was just protection. But now, it was my best weapon. So, when my parents brought Megan over that afternoon, her suitcase dragging across my floor like an unwelcome echo, I smiled politely and handed them lemonade like the perfect, obedient daughter. You're doing the right thing, Dad said, patting my shoulder. Family comes first, Mom added. Of course, I said sweetly. Always. Megan dumped her things in the guest room and announced, I'll redecorate this room later. It feels old. I laughed under my breath. Sure. Make yourself comfortable. If only she knew what kind of comfort she was walking into. That evening after they left, I walked through the house slowly. I touched the kitchen counter, the photos on the wall, the couch that still smelled like my perfume. It hurt, knowing I was about to let go of something I built from scratch. But this wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I knew my family. They never appreciated anything until it was gone. So I'd let them have it. Just for a moment. And when the right moment came, I'd take it all back in a way they'd never forget. Over the next few days, Megan moved in officially. She changed the curtains, rearranged furniture, and complained about the Wi-Fi speed. Mom dropped by unannounced, bringing groceries for the house. And Dad started parking his car in my driveway like he owned it. Every evening I watched it all quietly, from a distance, because I wasn't living there anymore. I checked into a serviced apartment downtown, just 15 minutes away. I told them I was staying with a friend for a bit to clear my head. They didn't even question it. They were too busy settling into my life. A week passed before I got the call. Rebecca, Mom's voice trembled over the phone. A man just came by saying something about the property lease. He said we need to vacate. I waited a beat before replying. Oh, that. What do you mean, that? She snapped. Why didn't you tell us this wasn't your house? I leaned back in my chair, swirling the straw in my iced coffee. Because you told me it was a free house, remember? I figured if it's free, it shouldn't matter who owns it. There was silence on the line, the kind that comes when reality finally sinks its claws in. You lied to us, she stammered. I smiled to myself. No, Mum. You assumed. There's a difference. I could hear Dad in the background yelling something incoherent, Megan crying, doors slamming. Then Mom's voice again, trembling with disbelief. They're asking us to leave by tomorrow. Oh, that's rough, I said softly. Maybe you can stay with Megan's boyfriend. Oh wait, right. Rebecca, she shouted, but I'd already ended the call. That night, I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat by the window of my apartment. It wasn't joy I felt. Not exactly. It was closure. The kind that comes when you finally stop begging people to see your worth and start letting the truth expose itself. For years, I'd been the one sacrificing, apologizing, and making peace. Now for the first time I was simply silent. And that silence, it was louder than any revenge I could have planned. By the next morning my phone was blowing up. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, even emails. Mom had sent long emotional paragraphs. Megan sent voice notes laced with fake tears. And Dad. He sent one text that simply read, "You've embarrassed this family." I laughed. The same family that kicked me out of my own house was now embarrassed because they'd been caught in their own lie. I didn't respond. Instead, I muted them all and went about my day. At around noon, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it, and there they were. My parents and Megan, standing in the hallway like ghosts of their own pride. Mom's eyes were red, Dad's jaw clenched, Megan's arms crossed tightly. "Can we come in?" asked. I stepped aside silently. They entered, and I watched as they scanned the place. A modern, minimal, quiet space that didn't carry the chaos of our family home. Dad broke the silence first. "What you did was cruel, Rebecca. You humiliated us." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "Did I? Or did you humiliate yourselves when you threw me out of a house you never owned?" Mom flinched. "We thought you were giving it to the family." "No," I said calmly. "You thought I was weak enough to let you take it." Megan rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. It's just a house." I turned to her. "Then why were you so desperate to move in?" That shut her up. Dad slammed his palm on the table. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I looked him dead in the eye. "You gave me guilt, manipulation, and silence. The rest I earned myself." He froze. Mom's eyes darted between us, unsure of what to say. I took a deep breath, then reached for an envelope sitting on the counter. "Here," I said, sliding it toward them. "This is the refund for the groceries you brought over when you moved in. I don't like owing anyone anything." Mom picked it up, confused. "Rebecca, this isn't necessary." "Oh, it is," I interrupted. "Because from now on we're even." Her lips parted, but no words came out. There was a long silence, the kind that feels heavy enough to press on your chest. Finally, Megan whispered, "So what now? You're just cutting us off." I smiled faintly. "Not cutting off. Just closing the chapter." Dad scoffed. "You'll regret this when you're alone." "Funny," I said softly. "I've never felt more peaceful than I do right now." He looked at me for a long time. That same look of disbelief he gave me every time I proved him wrong as a child. But this time there was something else in his eyes. Fear. The fear of losing control. They left without another word. That night, I sat by the window again, staring at the city lights. I replayed everything. Every insult disguised as advice, every "we're just worried about you," that was really just control. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. Revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about reminding them that I was never theirs to break. A few weeks later, I drove past the old neighborhood. The house, my house, was empty again. The blinds were drawn, the lawn was overgrown, and the "for lease" sign swayed gently in the wind. I parked across the street and watched for a moment. It looked smaller somehow. Maybe because I had finally grown beyond it. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Lily. "Dinner tonight. You owe me a full story about the great family fallout." Smiled. "You bring the wine. I'll bring the drama." And as I drove away, I realized something powerful. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the sound of your peace returning. 3 months passed before I heard from them again. 3 months of peace. 3 months without the heavy sighs, the guilt trips, or the backhanded comments disguised as family concern. I had started therapy, focused on my business, and learned to enjoy the quiet hum of my own space. For once, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Then, one Friday afternoon, as I was leaving a client meeting, my phone rang. I stared at the screen for a long second before answering. "Rebecca." His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Can we meet? It's important." I hesitated, then agreed. "Tomorrow. Noon. The old cafe near the park." When I walked in the next day, I saw both of them sitting there. Mom looking tired, Dad looking older, and for the first time, humbled. He stood when he saw me. "You look good." "Thanks," I said simply, taking a seat. For a while no one spoke. The cafe buzzed quietly around us, the clinking of cups filling the silence they couldn't. Finally, Mom sighed. We wanted to apologize. And blinked. For what exactly? For everything, she said softly. We shouldn't have treated you that way. You didn't deserve it. Dad nodded. We thought we were teaching you gratitude, but we were just controlling. That word, controlling, hung between us like a fragile truth. I stayed silent, watching them. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But old wounds don't heal with one apology over coffee. Then Mom added, We're losing the house. Froze. What do you mean? The rent increased. Megan moved out with her boyfriend. We can't keep up anymore. There was the real reason they called. I sipped my coffee slowly. So, what are you asking? Dad shifted uncomfortably. If you could help us. Just until we get back on our feet. I looked between them, the parents who kicked me out, humiliated me and called me selfish. And now, here they were asking for my help. Do you remember, I began softly, when you told me to share the house or I wasn't your daughter? They both nodded silently. Well, I continued, I did share. I shared everything, my money, my time, my patience. But when I stopped, you decided love was conditional. Mom's lips trembled. We were wrong. I smiled faintly. I know. There was another long silence before I said, I'll help you, but not the way you think. They looked up confused. I'll pay for your rent for the next 6 months, I said. But after that, you'll need to handle things on your own. I'm not your safety net anymore. Dad's eyes softened, and Mom reached across the table to touch my hand. Thank you, Rebecca. I nodded, pulling my hand away gently. This isn't for you. It's for me, so I can finally move on without guilt. A week later, I transferred the funds and closed that chapter once and for all. There were no more calls. No more guilt. Just silence. Peaceful, deserved silence. But the real twist came months later, when Megan called out of the blue. Hey, she said awkwardly. I just wanted to say. Get it now. They're living with me temporarily. It's not easy. I almost laughed. I bet it's not. She sighed. You were right. About all of it. That was the last time we spoke. Now, whenever I pass by that same cafe, I think about how everything came full circle. The same parents who once demanded everything from me now had to face the world without using me as their crutch. And me. I learned that revenge doesn't always have to be cruel. Sometimes, it's as simple as choosing peace when chaos expects you to fall apart. I'm Rebecca. I was once the daughter who couldn't say no. Now I'm the woman who finally did, and never looked back. It's strange how silence can become your favorite sound once you stop needing approval. Months turned into a year. The noise of family expectations, the guilt, the manipulation, all of it faded. For the first time in my adult life, I could wake up without the heaviness of obligation. I learned to cook for one without feeling lonely. I decorated my apartment with colors my mother would have hated. I laughed louder, slept longer, and built new friendships that weren't based on guilt or blood, but on respect. Every morning I made coffee and opened the windows to let in the sunlight, the same sunlight that used to feel so harsh in that house. Felt different now. Felt earned. One afternoon, while sorting old documents, I found the original lease to the family house. My signature stared back at me, the one they said didn't mean anything. I smiled, folded it neatly, and slid it into a drawer. I didn't need to hold on to anger anymore. They'd already written their own ending. Megan and I never became close again, but there was peace, a quiet acknowledgement that we'd both seen our parents for who they truly were. She stayed in her lane, I stayed in mine. And that was enough. Sometimes, healing doesn't mean reconciling. It means recognizing that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt, just admired from afar for how they once connected two worlds before the fire. I still get messages from distant relatives now and then. Rebecca, your parents talk about you a lot, one cousin texted recently. Good things, I hope, I replied with a laugh. Mostly how you've changed, she wrote back. That made me smile. They weren't wrong. I had changed, from the obedient daughter to the silent strategist, from the family scapegoat to the woman who learned her worth wasn't up for negotiation. A year later, I received an invitation. My parents' 35th anniversary. For a moment I just stared at it. No anger. No resentment. Just a quiet, knowing calm. I didn't attend. Instead, I donated the same amount they would have spent on that party to a local women's shelter, in honor of every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet for the sake of family. That night, as I walked home under the streetlights, I thought about the last words my father said before I left that day. "You'll regret walking away from us." He was wrong. I didn't regret walking away. I regretted not doing it sooner. Now, I share my story not out of bitterness, but out of hope. For anyone who's ever been made to feel small in their own family. For anyone who's been guilted into silence when they should have been celebrated for their strength. Because sometimes, revenge isn't a grand act. It's not shouting or destroying. Sometimes, revenge is the quiet life you build after. The peace you choose over chaos. So here I am. I'm Rebecca. I was the daughter who gave everything, and got kicked out of her own home. But I walked away, and in doing so, I found something far greater than revenge. Found myself.